Hey guys, Ash Rachel Legends. Welcome to the video. Send us some love, some positive vibes your way, especially if you need it out there today. Hey guys, I want to thank you for the all the positive comments. I did a shard opening video a few videos ago here on the channel, and man, so much love there. We had my son, Charlie, in the video. It just happened kind of organically. He just chills sometimes when I record in the background, just kind of waiting for dad to finish. And he came in the entire video, so 11 years on YouTube, my first video with the kiddo the whole time. Hey guys, Ash coming out. So thanks for the love and the positivity in the comments on that video, guys. Today, I want to talk about champions that Plarium tried to or killed. I say tried to because you can't keep a good champion down. Actually, my favorite nuker in the game is a champion that received a really big nerf, and I still think, well, he's still my favorite, right? I still think he's one of the top nukers out there, right? So they have nerf champions over the years, but they used to nerf a lot more than they do nowadays, right? Like now it's actually been a while, maybe with one exception, since we've seen like a proper nerf round. There was one update back in 2020, so like 5 years ago now, that they nerfed like 6 champions all in one patch note. Oh man, there was a big mass call from the community too that they should reimburse the the materials or the resources rather that go into those champions. So I want to ask you guys, just to start out here, are you on the hey, game should be well balanced, nerf the champions that need to be nerfed, right? Like for years, there's been a big contingent of raid players who want to see Yumeko not be able to reset Yumeko, for example. Before that, right, we had Taurus and Marichka for years. A lot of people thinking they're way too overpowered. Some still do. So what side do you fall on? Do you like nerfs? Or do you like to see indirect nerfs vis-a-vis buffs and meta shifts and new champions and things added to the game where other champions can shine? I kind of fall in between. Like most things in life, I'm a fence rider, but I will say that I don't mind nerfs when things are getting out of hand, but I prefer them to do the soft buffs, buff to other champions, give more options out there as well. Let's get into it here, guys. These are all the nerfs that I could find, and by the way, bug fixes, there's been like dozens and dozens and dozens of champions that got kind of an indirect, for example, Nogdar the Headhunter, right? Anybody remember? Osama, play the reel. Anybody remember when this dude could one-shot Sand Devil, right? He could just one-shot. Yeah, so that's a bug fix more than a nerf, right? Like champions clearly not working as intended. Also, I'm going to start out with two champions that were this close to being nerfed. In one occasion, it was actually the community. The day before the balance changes went live, Plarium, very uncharacteristically, they went in and they changed something before release. That's right, Duchess was going to get a big nerf. This is a few years ago. They were going to change the Shroud of Souls from a 5 to a 6 turn cooldown, book down to 5 instead of book down to 4. That would have been awful. I mean, it was a pretty crappy. I mean, she was more powerful than she is now, obviously 5 years ago, but it would have been just absolutely a train wreck of a nerf. So many players were relying on her for that perfect veil, as well as the block debuffs and everything like that, especially in Demon Lord back then. At least a lot of people were using her on their teams, and you know, it would have been a mess. So people were just so irate, so upset on Reddit, forums, everywhere, that Plarium decided to revert the nerf before it went in game. There was another time that they decided to revert the nerf. I just made a whole video on why I think that Geomancer is still the best epic in the game in a vacuum. It's hard to compare. It depends on what you need, right, on your account. But I think Geomancer is still the best here in 2025, going into 2026 before we know it here, which is great. I mean, someone's going to be the best, but they're actually going to give Geomancer a big nerf to the way that his passive worked. Basically how much damage he reflected back. That would have changed this champion in so many accounts who used him. This is several years ago. They decided not to do it, but they did share it with the content creators. And yeah, there was a big blowback kind of internally. Like, you're about to lose millions of players, right? And that is the tricky thing about nerfs in this game. This is a game where, I mean, you can spend real money, a lot of money, or just get so incredibly lucky and get one champion that you've been wanting for years and years and years. The feeling and the weight of a nerf, this is why I'm generally against them, even though I understand why a lot of players are for them too, right? You want balance. But in a game like this where you could be a player without Geomancer for years, and then you get him, and then a month later they're like, yeah, it's high time we nerf Geomancer, right?
No way. He paid for that?
Yeah, he did.
Let's just nerf it now. Nerf the A1. He needed that the most.
Yeah, I'll write it down.
Okay, so who did they nerf? Actually, the last champion to get a buff was once nerfed, which is kind of crazy. Because champions get nerfed, naturally, I should say, organically over time. Coronar actually got a nerf way back in the day. They, in a real spate of irony here, his A1, they just changed it. It hasn't gone in game at the time of this recording yet, but they just changed it to a 10% turn meter reduction. It was originally 10%. And they just reverted the nerf a few years, 5 years later, right, on Coronar. So that's number one. Number two, this is one that not a lot of players remember. It's very interesting, the trajectory of Dracomorph in this game, right? Now, way back in the day, he was one of, if not the worst legendary champions in the game upon release. I didn't play at release in Raid Shadow Legends, but I picked up the game, I would say about 6 months after the game was released, right after the Sir Nick fusion. I remember Dracomorph was the trashiest champion. He was last on every tier list. They actually gave him a big buff, which was great. They changed, I think he had the weak version of decreased defense and weaken on his A3. The weak version on a legendary, that was lame. So they changed that. He had a really great A2 now with the 4 poisons. You know Draco's kit, right? But they actually, a year later, after the big buff, a year or two later, they went in and they gave him a big nerf. A lot of people don't remember this, but Dracomorph's A1, the Seeping Pain, was one of the most broken A1s in the game way back in the day. Now, I'm talking, it has damage increased by 10% for each debuff on the target, sure, but it had the surplus damage. Will attack one random enemy with any surplus damage if the target is killed. Damage inflicted by is equal to triple the surplus damage. Surplus damage cannot be critical. So they changed this, and they basically, because it used to be, if you could pop off like a minion on Ice Golem, for example, right? If you could kill a minion with his A1, the surplus damage, it used to be critical. It could pop off Ice Golem one hit. I think it was like Ice Golem. There was no Ice Golem hard. There was no Ice Golem level 25. I think it was just level 20 had just came out. Originally, Raid was introduced with only 15 dungeon levels. Then they came 20. Then they came 25. Then they went hard in each dungeon as well, right? But he could just one-shot bosses with the surplus damage on the A1. So in this case, I actually think the nerf was appropriate on Dracomorph. Next up was an epic. Yeah, they've actually nerfed a couple epics over the years. And it's always a bummer. But this one, I could kind of understand. It was Urogrim. Now, Urogrim came out, and he was a game changer. There was a lot of people, including myself, that was like, is this the new bad El Khazar? You don't need BEK. You've got Urogrim. He was insane. His A1 originally was a triple hitter. Each hit has a chance of placing a poison. It was the same in terms of the poisons, but it was a triple hit. Sign me up. But his A3, the Bizarre Vipers, the best move in his kit, which is, by the way, still really good, right? This is one of those instances where a champion can still provide a ton of utility, still a great champion, even after the nerf. Same thing with the other epic, but he has speed in all battles, 20, a 20 speed aura in all battles, fantastic for an epic champion. But this Bizarre Vapors was 2 poisons on all enemies for 2 turns, with a continuous heal on all allies on a 3 turn. It was a 5 turn booked down to 3, but oh my god, that was just nuts on Urogrim. He was just absolutely insane. He's still good, but that nerf came only, I want to say, a week or two after his release. There was actually a champion that they nerfed pre-release as well, and that was Gizcard the Segiles. So they announced him, they had him on the test server, they had his whole kit shared. Originally, his AoE provoke was on a 2-turn cooldown, book down to a 2. So it was 3 book down to a 2-turn on an AoE 75% provoke. It still wouldn't be game breaking today, but for an epic champion, an AoE 2-turn 75% provoke, yeah, he was a monster. He was nerfed again pre-release though on Gizcard, the Sagiled. Next up, guys, we have another epic, and it was Madame Serris. Now, Madame Serris, I thought was a very good nerf, honestly. She has a great kit, a great AoE on the A2 with the buff steal. She always felt to me like more of a legendary, but especially before her nerf. She has a good passive, some fear on the A1, but the Midnight Ritual is the highlight of her kit, especially back in the day. She was in every arena team, even high-end, top-tier Platinum Arena back in the day. Because she has buff removal, this is way before Polymorph and stuff like that, buff removal and decrease attack and decrease defense. Originally, it was on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. They changed it from a 5 book down to 3 to a 6 book down to 4. Now, back in the day, she was not just amazing in the arena, like she still is today, especially even with like Feral and stuff like that, ways to mitigate sheep, right? But back in the day, she was one of the best decrease defense, decrease attack debuffers in the entire game in PvE as well on release. And they actually didn't nerf her for a few months after her release as well. You could use her anywhere in the game. Clear debuffs, place decrease defense and decrease attack, that is a legendary-like skill, especially on a 3-turn cooldown. So Madame Serris, they tried to kill, didn't totally kill her. The reason I like the nerf though is because it kept her extremely effective and still S tier in the arena at the time, right? Because you want to open up with this move. You know, generally you're not going to get back to it in 3 or 4 turns. Sometimes you are, but really it's an opener, right? Remove their buffs, go in there. This is before Stone Skin as well, right? So nowadays though, she's solid, but the nerf was good because it made her a beast in one area, restricted her from being so OP, better than legendaries in other areas of the game. The Bride and the Groom, Siphi the Lost Bride. I can't believe they nerfed Siphi and she's still this good. Same thing with Rotos, right? But Siphi has just one of the best kits in the game, does she not? Does she not? This Whirlwind Romance used to be a 3-turn cooldown. Yeah, for a long time too. For the first year she was in the game, it was a 5 book down to 3. 3-turn cooldown with block debuffs, increased defense, increased speed, and a turn meter fill. Yeah. Maybe a little bit too strong there. She was the best PvE champion, the best PvP champion. After the nerf, she was still super viable in both areas. She remains today still arguably a top 10 support, certainly, in those categories. She still has a good revive, but they also nerfed her passive. A lot of people don't remember this one. Each hit heals all allies by 10% of their max HP at the start of their turn. We can see the patch notes here. Shout out to a Yumi Love. This is where I got all the information just to make sure on these nerfs. It actually used to be a 15% heal. 15% heal on this passive. They changed it to a 10% as well. So Siphi, they tried to nerf her, but I mean, and they did nerf her to be fair, right? But Siphi was kind of like a little bit of the Madame Serris vibe, right? Where she was still super viable in the arena, maybe a little bit less so in PvE, but still a goat, still a beast. So I felt like Siphi is an example of a nerf that can, you know, the most powerful champion of the game, which she was, how you can kind of give him a little haircut, but not shave off the entire do, right? So anyway, let's talk about Rotos. He's right here. He's the Groom. Siphi and Rotos were Halloween champions, right? And man, when they were added, everybody loved these. To me, it's almost nostalgic to think about champions of years past in Raid and kind of where you were in your life and whatever. It's stupid, but it's how life works, right? It's how our memories work. Like I remember where I was when they announced these champions holding hands in that image, and you're like, whoa, I want these champions. They look so good. They gave him a big nerf, and he's still my favorite nuker in the game. Of course, yes, he's the one I was referring to earlier in the video. This dude is still the freaking GOAT. You cannot bring him down. You can't hold him down. You can try, but PLARIUM can't nerf this dude. Even with 90 freaking base speed, no aura, I mean, lousy base stats pretty much for the most part, right? You still can't hold Rotos down, can you? You can't. Check out his A3. It used to be ignore 70% of target's defense instead of 60, as if he needs it, right? 70% of target's defense Ignore unkillable block damage. Enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. It ended there. But now this champion needs to have maximum amount of HP from his A2 gained first. You have to kind of power him up vis-a-vis the A2 ability. They also took that A2 and they shaved off some of the damage multipliers as well. So they made it hit a little bit weaker, his Vitality Plunder, and they made him fully powered up before he can block Revive. And again, they went and changed that Ignore defense. So they did a lot to Rotos, but you can't hold Rotos down, man. You can't hold the Groom down. He's not leaving Siphi on her wedding day. He's not going to leave anybody at the altar. He is here for life, baby. That is Rotos the Lost Groom. Another champion who they really tried to nerf the heck out of this dude. It didn't really work. Now, those of you OGs out there, you can tell the other viewers that I am right. He and Hegemon defined the arena for years, right? For years. This is before UDK. Not that he counters Tormin, but like the UDK and Stoneskin meta was like after this meta, right? But there was, you had to run immunity sets on everybody back. Immunity, yeah, it's a set in the game, believe it or not. They were one of the most popular sets because Tormin, for a big reason, it was because of Tormin. Now, he was so broken when he was added to the game, and they reworked his passive a couple times actually, but essentially what it used to be on this dude is, see how it reads right now, 20% chance, 30% chance rather, of placing freeze on each enemy. Each time they have a buff, they get a buff, or have their turn meter filled. It applies up to twice per enemy turn, one for buffs, and one separately for turn meter fills. Now, everything after the turn meter filled, that was added, right? That was added because it used to be, if one champion buffs a bunch of their allies, it would proc or have a chance at procking every single time. So basically, you get a turn meter fill, or you put buffs on allies. With Tormin on the team, you're gonna get frozen. He was just like the absolute just king of freeze. That's why when Dark Elhain entered the game, right, it was like, ooh, they're finally giving us something to fight against Tormin with. And to be fair, she was really good at it. Instantly removes freeze. Now there's other ways to deal with Tormin, mainly Stone Skin, right? But plenty of other options out there. But man, they had to nerf him. He was too meta-defining when we talk about the arena specifically. Other champions, like with the aforementioned Hegemon, he was nerfed for Stone Skin, or vis-a-vis something else, so a soft nerf to Hegemon. Probably the least popular nerf in all of Raid Shadow Legends history. That's right, you know him. He's not an epic. He's not a legendary. He's a rare. Corpulent Cadaver. They nerfed his A1. He was part of the Affinity Shield team, right? Ironically, it's kind of back with Titus and Wixwell and whatnot, but they're not going to allow a rare to compete with your Void legendaries, are they, ladies and gentlemen? No. Crushing Mass, they went and they nerfed it. Attack one enemy, inflicts additional damage of this champion's under a shield. That used to be millions and millions and millions with Affinity Shield. However, additional damage equal to 30% of the shield. Awesome. But cannot exceed 200,000. He can still actually deal some decent damage on the Affinity Shield team, still pull up huge numbers. But man, going from millions to 200,000, that's not going to be it. So he's really nerfed into the ground in a lot of ways, So that was a big bummer. And a lot of players, at least in my comments, that was the final straw for them, that Corpulent Cadaver nerf. Madman, I wasn't sure if I should include him or not, but they actually went and they changed his A1. It used to be where the second hit on this A1, it would re-roll damage multipliers where he could put out just insane amount of damage. And they went in there and they nerfed it. Now, I never used a Madman team, so you guys can tell me if you have experience using him, but I don't know if that was a bug fix or a nerf. Either way, they went in and they were not happy about it. They took him away, right? Now, there's been whole categories of nerfs as well in this game in terms of, ally attackers and certain content. Enemy max HP with the enemy max HP mitigation as well. Taunt nerfs on Hydra. So there've been kind of like big class action nerfs, if you will, right? In terms of the core mechanics of the game. So I'm not going to list all those champions, but I thought we would shout it out at the end of the video. And we're going to shout out the massive rework nerf that was some consider a buff to Trunda Guilt Mallet, right? They really changed her A3, but the thing about Trunda is they didn't nerf Yameko, but they nerfed or they reworked Trunda, but she still is one of the most capable, if not the best attack-based damage dealers out there in the game for Hydra Clan Boss. So it didn't really affect her viability anywhere else in the game, right? There was, you know, we thought that maybe because of the stone skin added, she would be better in the arena, maybe a little bit worse in Hydra. But the truth is, maybe she went from a 10 out of 10 in Hydra to a 9.75 out of 10 in Hydra. And in the arena, she went from, you know, a champion that was rarely used in terms of the top arena meta, she can still be a capable nuker, to a champion that's still rarely used. So it's hard to say she got nerfed, but they tried, I guess. Anyway, guys, that's my list of nerfs in Raid Shadow Legends history. Am I forgetting anybody? I feel like I'm forgetting a champion, but I couldn't really find a consolidated list on nerfs out there at all on the internet. So this is a little ChatGPT AI for me to come up with this list, as well as my own memory. So very well could have forgotten somebody, but it's funny. It's funny. I'll kind of leave on the note of it's funny that a lot of these champions they nerfed are still some of the best champions in the game, right? It just goes to show you never know. You never know. And it could, who knows, prove the whole argument that, hey, nerfing is okay. These champions are still going to be good in a lot of cases. Anyway, guys, let me know how you feel in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care, guys.
It seems to be true that I found my heart's home. Who thought